I will give ceremonies. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanam Jana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namashrishtam Manumapi Satriputram Atra Swarupam Rupam Dasyagrajamarupurim Matharim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivaram Maho Radhikamadhavasam Prapto Yasya Pratitha Gripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natusmi Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhobhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Nikhila shruti mole ratnamala diti nirajita padapankajanta Aji mukta kulairupasyamanam parithashtam harinam samshrayami Anarpita charim chirat karunayavatirna kalo Samarpaitum munnatojvalarasam sabhakti shriyam Hari purata sundaradyuti kadamba sandipitaha Sada hridaye kandhare spurato pasachinandana Ajanulambita bhujo kanakavadatu Sankirtanai kapitaro kamalaya takshu Vishwambharo dijavaro jugadharma palo Vande jagat priyakaro karunavatharo Ladini Shakti Swarupaya Gauranga Suhridaya Cha Bhakta Shakti Pradhanaya Gadadhara Namastate He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Radhe Vrindavanadishe Karunamritavahine Kripaya Nijapadabja Dasyanmayam Pradiyatam Bhaktya Vihinay Aparadha Lakshay Chiptas Chakamaditarangamadye Kripamaye Tvam Sharanam Prapanam Vrinde Maste Charanarvindam Vrinde Maste Charanarvindam Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Praman Hari 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 Bol. So, good evening, Pranam to all of you. Thanks so much for coming. Thank you so much, Sadhu Krishna Prabhu, for the invitation to this new beautiful place. It's an honor to be here with all of you. So today we are in our last meeting in this to Bulgaria. And we are doing ISTAGOSTHI one more time, which is basically questions and answers, a very classical, important way to develop dialogue, develop our capacity for hearing and expressing ourselves, and presenting relevant inquiries, which is one of the main aspects in the interaction that takes place when knowledge comes to our life, as we were speaking the other day. Srila, the Bhagavad Gita is saying, Pariprashnena, tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena. So pariprashna means inquire with a spirit of humility. With humility basically means in this case, not wanting to exploit truth, not wanting to take advantage from the answers you are hearing for some ulterior motives, but approaching the truth with the spirit of, contributing to the center. Truth is not to be exploited, basically. For us, truth ultimately is beauty. So beauty is not to be exploited by us. Even like once one would say, beauty is the exploiter. We are to be exploited by beauty. We are not to exploit beauty. It's a way of putting, of course. We are not promoting exploitation of any form, but actually giving ourselves to the highest beauty, which is the highest truth. The ultimate form of truth must be beautiful. That's our idea of he who is above in the picture. The all attractive. The very name Krishna means basically the final condensation of beauty. I remember before meeting the Vaishnavas, before starting officially to practice what I'm trying to practice for the last 20 years, I used to read some other material, as you can imagine. And someone I liked to read a lot was Fyodor Dostoevsky. And Dostoevsky, he's a very interesting author. And one of the quotes that stuck with me, he will say, "Beauty will save the world." Of course, it sounded nice, but of course, if you don't have a deeper idea, what's the implication of that? In which sense beauty will save the world? So eventually, when I get to know about the concept of ultimate beauty, all attractive personality, then I understand, that's how the world will be saved. That's how I can be saved, and I am part of the world. So, the world won't be saved from one stroke. No? So we have to get to look for individual redemption, and that in turn will create some epidemic effect. So if you want to save the world, the best thing you can do is redeem yourself first, which is, of course, way more difficult than trying to save the world without saving yourself. It's more difficult, not to say impossible. That will never happen. So beauty will save the world. Another way is allow the all attractive to redeem yourself, to redeem you by the power of his beauty. So basically, that's the idea of our practice and our inquiry, looking for truth. Again, I'm saying all this because we are about to have ISTAGOSTHI, which is we have questions, and we are open for answers, but our questions are in the direction of our deepest thirst, if you will. And our deepest thirst is for beauty, basically. Truth, love, beauty. Those three words are very foundational for us. When speaking about the ultimate reality, we cannot avoid speaking about truth, love, and beauty. All of them perfectly combined. So if we are to approach such a reality, truth, love, and beauty in the highest degree, we should be very careful that we are approaching that with the spirit of what we will call service. In the sense, beauty, love, and truth is so noble, so high, that we cannot make that reality an object of our own whimsical, whatever, desires. But we are to approach that offering ourselves. What can I do here in the realm of topmost love, beauty, harmony, truth? So that's the spirit of the interaction, basically. No? We are here trying to let truth be victorious. Let love, let harmony defeat me, if you will. If I'm defeated by beauty, I'm victorious. As paradoxical as that may sound. You're being defeated, but actually you're being victorious. In this world, we try to always be the victorious ones, and we are always end up being defeated at the end of the day. So the real victory entails to know how to get defeated. And that's why we say so many times per day in our tradition, Ki Jai. Maybe you already hear that, the ones who are new. You hear the word Jai, Jai. Why they are repeating so many times? It's Jai, Ki, Jai. Every time they say Ki, I suppose I have to say Jai, then they are saying like this. So Ki Jai means basically all victory. All victory. And before that, we invoke different personalities, basically, or different aspects of supreme reality. May that be victorious on me. In other words, may I be defeated by the power of love, the power of grace. May that defeat me. In other words, that will be real victory. So anyhow, some introductory words regarding what we are supposed to do here in the next hour or so, just not to lose sight about the extraordinariness of the moment. It's not just, okay, we are sitting in some yoga mat, we are doing some circle, some nice candles are there, I will share some words and that's it. No, there's way much more than that if we dispose ourselves to, again, to be part of the interaction. We are, again, together trying to cooperate with one another in a joint effort, trying to invoke the presence of the ultimate sweetness, truth, beauty, harmony to manifest through our whatever we may share today in the form of questions, answers, interactions. So the potential is there, but we need each other for that to happen. Do not think that it all depends on me sitting on this side of the camera. You have to make big part of the whole equation. So that's it. Invited to invest your part. Are there any questions you may like to present? Any topics, something you may like to share? Of course, someone is online and have some question also can share. We will give some priority to the ones physically accompanying us here. Brindavan? You have one question? No, Brindavan.
I'm wondering if you can explain a little bit about the personality of Arjuna. Because I've heard the statement that he is always in the material world accompanying Krishna in his Lila here. I also wonder if he has any relationship with the Vrindavan Lila.
Arjuna. Okay. So, well, Arjuna, of course, is mostly known to us. Not to all of us, but to some of us, because of the Bhagavad Gita, the famous ISTAGOSTHI, if you will, that Krishna and Arjuna had in a battlefield. You can have ISTAGOSTHI anywhere, as you can see. So Arjuna is a warrior, a kshatriya, an administrator, if you will, someone who has the nature of protecting others, has the power, has the intelligence to do so, but of course on top of that he's a great devotee of Krishna. Yes, he's a Nitya Parishad, or an eternal companion of Krishna, who serves Krishna in a friendly relationship. Sakya. But a particular type of Sakya, different from the Sakya that we have been speaking these days in the Brahmas Vimohan Lila. It's not the Sakya of Vrindavan. His type of friendship is called technically by Rupa Goswami Puri Sambandhi. Puri Sambandhi means, Puri means city, like Jagannath Puri. And Sambandhi has to be with relationship. So Puri Sambandha means Arjuna had with Krishna a city relationship. He's an urban friend, metropolitan Sakya. No, because he's not a coward in Vrindavan, but he's a personality coming from the big city. In the Lila that we know from Mahabharata, that happens mostly in Hastinapur, and there is another standard there. He's friends with Krishna, and friends, of course, as we know, relate to each other as equals. That's basically the quality of being a friend with someone. While the relationship between Krishna and his parents is not from equals. A father and mother will never relate to the child as equals, because you need that hierarchy there for the whole relationship to happen. The baby needs to be supported by the mother. You cannot be equal and the mother's just like, okay, today my baby will feed me, or something like that. Or he will be independent. He doesn't need me. He already is old, 3 months or something. No, there's some relationship of dependent and what's the other part? Okay, the one on which the dependent depends on. Sustainer, maintainer. So, and of course, there are other relationships which similarly do not basically imply this equanimity or equality in the relationship, but friendship is so. But that said, Arjuna's friendship with Krishna is unique because he treats Krishna on an equal level. He speaks as a friend. But on some occasions, when Krishna shows Aishwarya, and Krishna shows that he's, quite an extraordinary guy, if you want to put it like that, a very extraordinary personality. Remember, you have your friend, you are speaking with your friend, relating on equal terms, and suddenly your friends kind of erupts and becomes the universe in front of you. And you see all universes entering, going up, and unlimited forms coming from your friend. And you're like, who is my friend? I thought he was my friend, but now I realize he's someone else. And your experience, he's my friend, starts to shrink, to recede to the background. So that happened, of course, as you know, in the 11th chapter of the Gita, Vishwarupa Darshan Yoga, where Krishna is showing Arjuna, I am the universe, see the whole universe coming from me. And Krishna was still seated on the chariot with Arjuna, but the whole universe was like expanding from Krishna, and Arjuna was seeing that. And his friendship went behind the curtains, if you will. His friendship was not, what to speak of increasing. It diminished because he realized, oh, Krishna is God. He's my friend, but at this point, I cannot remember that. The idea of his God comes right in my face. So he starts to cry and pray to Krishna, please forgive me. So many times I sit with you on the same bed, like equals. I treated you like my friend. And now I realize who you are. Sorry, excuse me for my offense. And he's crying and afraid of what he's seeing. Till he begs to Krishna, please retire that form. Too much, thank you. He was curious. He asked Krishna, show me that. I would like to see that. Krishna said, are you sure? You make it a little bit nervous. No, I want to see that. It was some form of curiosity. Krishna said, okay, tatashtu, so be it. But then Arjuna said, okay, thank you, stop it. Stop the show, it's too much. So Krishna returns to his two-armed form, Dvibhuj, Chaturbuj, then Dvibhuj. He goes in sequence, and Arjuna is like, oh, now I feel more at home. I can relate with you. With the other form, I don't know where to start. There's no beginning, there is no end. So the point is, that's the friendship, that's the psychological makeup of Arjuna as a friend of Krishna, which, as we say the other day, is way different from other friends of Krishna. For example, in Vrindavan, if Krishna were to exhibit something like what he exhibited in front of Arjuna, in front of the Gopas, Krishna's friends in Vrindavan, the Gopas won't be impressed with that. What to speak of being afraid? They won't even be impressed. They won't be even like, wow, Krishna, you're so incredible. They would say like, Stop joking with us. Stop doing that nonsense. Let's continue playing. All that magic, those tricks that you learn from somewhere. Stop doing all that show and come with us. We are bored waiting for you to come for the hide and seek game we are playing. Or like we said the other day, Krishna is lifting Govardhan. That's pretty Aishvaric. Imagine if your 5-year-old friend is lifting a mountain for a week with this finger. I mean, you start to wonder, who is he? In a normal, quote-unquote, condition, you may think that. But Vrindavan normal is another standard. So Brajavasis are seeing Krishna doing that. And the friends in particular, everyone is increasing their own intimacy, but the friends in particular are telling Krishna, you say, like, hey, Kanaya, I mean, 3 days already lifting that hill. You must be tired. Pass the hill to Sridham. He's stronger than you. He always defeats you on a daily basis wrestling. All of us know that. You're weaker than Sridham. So give the hill to Sridham. So you can rest and we can massage your arm for a while. That's the psychology of a friend in Vrindavan. So imagine that. So their Sakya is increasing. When Krishna shows Aishwarya, their Sakya increases. Vatsal increases. Madhurya increases. That's the psychology of Vrindavan. You put intimacy in front, their own intimacy increases. You put majesty in front, their own intimacy increases. Whatever you put in front of them, their intimacy increases. That's the nature of their love. It's like takes everything on the way and nourishes from that. No matter if Krishna appears with 4 arms, universal form, eating in a picnic, full informality, full Aishvar, no, whatever. You put whatever you want. Brajavasi's love just intimacy escalates. So Arjuna has mostly that disposition. And he's an eternal associate of Bhagavan. And you mentioned that he's always on earth accompanying Krishna in his Lilas. Well, that's not only applicable to Arjuna, but it's applicable to all of the associates of Bhagavan. And here we enter into another one of the Achintya situations. Because we hear, as we were saying the other day, Bhagavan is coming on earth like he did. For example, Bhagavan Sri Krishna came 5,000 years ago on this planet Earth. He performed his Lila, and he then wrapped up the Lila. But it is saying in Shastra, that same Lila is then transferred and executed in another planet Earth, in another universe. So at every moment, Krishna is always executing his pastimes on some planet Earth, in some universe. So now, of course, you may ask, so if, in one sense, he's always on Earth with his associates. So it doesn't mean that in Golok Vrindavan there's nobody there, because they are always on Earth. You go to Vaikuntha and there is some sign, no, we are on Earth. No, look up for us there. Sorry, no, they are there and they are here. I mean, I do like this, but it's not a geographical thing. So again, then you start to thinking, okay, there are different manifestations in which Krishna is always executing his lila in what it is the aprakat lila, or the unmanifest lila, invisible to our eyes, and also the prakat lila on earth, some planet Earth. And he's always with his associates. So there are simultaneous manifestations of Krishna in all these 2 places, and the associates as well. Even on top of that, for example, if you study the Bhagavatam, in the 10th canto, when Krishna is marrying the 16,000 queens, that's an interesting section. So Krishna is marrying 16,000 queens at the same time. So Narad Muni is there in Dwarka, and he receives the news. No, I mean, that's pretty interesting event. If someone invites you, I invite you to my marriage, that's all already interesting. No? One marriage. But what if it's 16,000 simultaneously? I mean, you start to be in anxiety. I mean, I have to just pick one of the 16,000. I cannot do it. But when Narad Muni goes, he finds that Krishna is celebrating in one palace the marriage with one queen, and all the associates are there, Vasudeva, Devaki, and Arjuna, and so on. And then Narad Muni goes immediately to the next palace, and Krishna and the other queen and the family members of the other queen, and also Vasudeva and Devaki and Arjuna are also there, and so on. He's visiting all these palaces quickly. It's not that all of them are running before Narada, not like what did we say the other day with Brahma and the boys and the calves and going back and forth, and what's going on here. So Narada Muni found that there are 16,000 expansions of each of these associates simultaneously. So you can imagine, Narad Vimohan Lila. Narada Muni was now bewildered what's taking place here. So I'm saying all the things just again to understand that the dynamics in transcendence are beyond mathematics, if you will. So in that sense, yes, Arjuna is accompanying Krishna in the Lilas he executes on earth, not precisely in Vrindavan, but wherever he's executing his Lila, whatever, maybe Hastinapur and so on. And regarding if he has some identity in Vrindavan, well, there is some connection that has been made between Arjuna and there's one Lila, very brief Lila, in which Arjuna wants to experience for a moment Brajabhav. And there are these types of Lilas in which, okay, you go and bathe in that lake, and you go out, and you will have a body of a gopi, Arjuniya gopi. So, but mostly these types of Lilas are a way of saying, okay, Arjuna is pretty curious, as you can see. He wants to see the Visvarup. Okay, now let's try to taste a little bit of Brajabhav. But it's not so much depicted as a permanent identity, but just like a moment in which Arjuna wants to taste that. And it's a way of also of highlighting the ultimacy of Braja Lila, basically. Like showing, okay, other devotees from other Lilas want to taste that. Well, if you analyze the opposite way, Brajavas are not interested in tasting anything different from what they are tasting at all. They don't have that curiosity. As we know, the only curiosity the Brajavasis have, like it was shown in the Bhagavad, and also after Nanda Maharaj was kidnapped by the associates of Varuna, he was taken down the waters, and Krishna goes and rescues Nanda Maharaj, and all these inhabitants from the aquatic planets, if you will, start to praise Krishna as Bhagavan, and all this, like, they start to glorify Krishna as God. And Nanda Maharaj is witnessing all that. And he's like, what's going on here? Like, he's my son. Why you are praising him like God? But that was pretty Aishvaric moment. So after that, he's rescued from down the waters by his son, Krishna. So Nanda Maharaj is kind of, wow, something extraordinary just happened. And so he returns, and all the Brajavasis were like, where's Nanda Maharaj? And they are village people. So village people, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no Google, they're not like, let's see the news of the world. So the news of the world in the village is you get together in the evening in the corner. There's one place, the news corner, and everyone gets together and start to share Gramya Katha, what is called. In Vrindavan, there's Gramya Katha means village talk. No? We as practitioners use that term like how do you say in English? This
gossip?
Yeah, disparagingly or whatever. Like not something like prajalpa, or like gossip. But in the Lila there is gossip. But all revolving around Krishna. You know what Krishna did today? What he said? Or they are saying that he was the one who stole the butter from this. Nobody could confirm, but the rumor is there. That's the gossip village talk on there. So when Nanda Maharaj is coming from the ocean, he's the king of the village. The king is kidnapped. You can imagine that's the main event for the whole Braj. And the king is returning, and everyone wants to know how you return, what happened. And Nanda Maharaj is like, I have to share this with someone. No? I just experienced something extraordinary. So he starts to share all the things, and I was below the water, and Krishna appeared, and Varuna came and offered pranam to Krishna, and all the Brajavasis are like what? No? And all these celestial being came and started to offer prayers to our Krishna, to my son. I cannot believe. And everyone was like, how can this happen? Maybe what Gargacharya said when Krishna was born is true, that Narayan will do some special things through him. Somehow we know that Krishna is special. He's one of us, of course. That's how the Brajavasi think. He's one of us. There's no doubt. He showed that many ways, but there is something special about him. So the conversation kind of escalated to a point where everyone thinks, yeah, Krishna is so special that maybe he knows which will be our future, our next life. So let's go and ask him, so if he can tell us which will be our next life. Remember, Brajavasis are not thinking we are eternally liberated associates and super high devotees, nothing like that. They're saying we are ordinary village people. Let's see, by the 4 laws of karma, where will be our next birth. So they go to Krishna and they ask, no, which will be our next life? Can you show us that to us? And Krishna said, yes, let's come with me. So he takes them, I think, to a Krura Ghat or some body of water. And they say, okay, enter the water. He creates some like mystical moment. Please enter the water now. So now you have to immerse yourself in the water, and then after that, you will see your next life. So the Brajavasis go. And when they go out, Krishna shows them that he gives like a portal, very mystically. But again, their intimacy keeps intact. No? So they see which is their next life then. And of course, what do they see in that portal? It's like if Krishna will have put a mirror in front of them. So they see exactly the same situation that they are in. They see themselves next to each other, the cows, the village, and they say, oh, nothing will change. We'll be exactly the same. And they are like, great. That's the idea. That's what we want. And they start like to celebrate. End of the portal, everything closed, and the dynamics of the Lila continue. So my point is, Brajavasis are not like, maybe we can taste Dwarka, Brab, or that's no. They are only concerned about their cows and their village life and how to keep that forever. And of course, Krishna will maintain that for sure. That's essential for him. So anyhow, some words in connection to Arjuna and his personality and mode and yeah, the question topic. Yeah, I agree, bro.
As you mentioned in the morning that the devotee should not have a material life, and I would like to ask you to elaborate on this subject. Because many of us, they live in the world. To say, I remember this question was asked a few years ago in ISKCON, and the answer was, well, when you live among the devotee and the devil, that's the real spiritual life, and when you live outside, this is some kind of compromise. You somehow have to connect it to Krishna, but
Yeah.
if you like to elaborate, especially for those who are living outside the temple, and how to connect their life with Krishna.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to say that I respectfully disagree with the reply that was given to you a few years ago. With all respect to whomever may have said that, I agree to disagree. Because, I mean, this idea of you live outside or inside, what's outside, what's inside? Or I live in the temple or outside the temple, what's the temple? I understand that at one point this type of black and white distinctions may be made, but at one point you need to be more flexible and more elastic, and not compromising anything, but actually on the contrary, increasing your commitment. Because if not, it lends to, okay, the ones in the temple are the saintly people, the monks are the only pure ones, and the other ones outside, half-cooked, half-baked members of the community. No? What to do? They are in the dark well, you know which one? Already half in the dark well, trying to get out of the well sometimes. So that's not very encouraging. No? If you are in that situation, you don't feel like, great, I have so much hope. Or it can lend to complacency, like, okay, I'm on that side of the equation, so I can be ordinary and be half-baked forever, and it's okay because I am not in the temple. And also it can give too much baggage on the ones in the temple, because you're expecting them to be almost like avatars or something. No? They have to save the whole community by the strength of their purity, and they may have their own struggles as well. It's not that you are a monk and you are automatically transcendental because of having this color of cloth or something. So it's a delicate situation. It can lend to this, and I've seen that. I've seen the things. I've seen devotees living in a family life in their houses and thinking, okay, we have a license to be mediocre or to be to be complacent. You have the license, and that creates this type of conformity. You say conformism.
Yes.
And that's not healthy. And on the other side, you have the ones in the temple that they're carrying with this overdose of expectation from the rest of their community. All the spotlights are on the saffron ones. And I don't know, if the saffron one at one point decides, I'll get married. For some of them, that's a trauma. Or that's technically considered you fell. I mean, we are laughing, we should, but not because we should be crying actually. But I understand, yeah. Sometimes we laugh. But that's how it happens sometimes. It shouldn't happen like that. No? But sometimes I've seen many devotees being totally, and I'm sure it's not only happening in our tradition, but sometimes you overemphasize the things. And you think, okay, now I have certain particular nature and needs that I need to accomplish outside of a monastic framework. And you start to get tortured by the idea, this is not so high, I'm not pleasing my guru that much, I am going down, not up, and all these types of like negative connotations. And that by you thinking like that, you are further creating more negativity. So you're kind of invoking more of that. So I personally do not agree with that. I don't think you judge the fruit, the tree by its fruits. What's the result of that? So I would say there are when we say the temple, again, what's the temple? It all depends on where is your consciousness, or to say I live outside or inside. What's outside or inside? You can be a monk and be totally puffed up or distracted by who knows what, or repressed, or doing an external show of monasticism. Well, it's time for you to get married, whatever the case. And how much you are inside the temple. Again, the temple is not a wall. No? The temple is a state of consciousness, basically. And everyone can live in a temple. No? Everyone can live in an ashram. That's the word ashram. You have brahmachari ashram, you have sannyas ashram, grihastha ashram, or panaprastha ashram. So all of them are ashrams. Ashram means, sometimes you use that word for temple. Let's go to the ashram. Basically, you should say, let's go from one ashram to another. That should be the ideal standard. No, it's not that. Let's go from the dark well to the shelter. No? So if you are a grihastha, you are in an ashram. Ashram means shelter. So you have the, and of course this is a responsibility. No? You have the, not force, but if you choose to do that, you can do of your house a temple. Your house can be a temple, a shelter, an ashram. You can create a lifestyle that is sheltering you. Of course, this is not an excuse not to visit the other ashrams, if you will. But the house should be an ashram. Like I remember once I was speaking with one devotee who kind of lived a few hours from the ashram, from monastic temple, if you will. And he will live with his wife and 3 children. I mean, he lives with them. And all, they are devotees. But there were no devotees in the nearby area. So he was telling me, "Oh Maharaj, I miss Sadhu Sangha so much. I'm not having Sadhu Sangha for the last 2-3 years." And I was like, "Okay, what do you mean by that?" So I told him, "So for the last 2-3 years, you are somehow like, how do you say? You are inside your room and you don't see your wife or your children for the last 3 years. That's why you say you don't have Sadhu Sangha?" Like implying there are Sadhu Sangha also. I mean, what do you mean? "No, I don't have Sadhu Sangha. I have association with devotees. Your wife is a devotee, Vaishnavi. Your children are devotees, probably better than you." And you say, "No, they are not Sadhu Sangha." So what idea do you have of that? And instead of honoring that Sadhu Sangha for the last 3 years, you are just thinking, "I don't have Sadhu Sangha." If you are thinking like that, probably when you meet some other devotees, who knows how much you can appreciate that Sadhu Sangha. If you cannot appreciate the Sadhu Sangha you have at home, maybe you won't appreciate that Sadhu Sangha anywhere else. So when we say we live in the world, again, what does it mean to live in the world? It's not just, in one sense, all of us live in the world. If you want to speak, inhabitants of planet Earth. We are all in the world. We are in the same room here, the same country, in the same state. And again, where we are according to our consciousness. We can be in the material world, we can be somewhere else. You can be in your house, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur always very nicely says. Of course, I know it's easier said than done. I don't want to make this cheap. No, you can make everything an ashram and totally transcendental at home. I say like, "Yes, Maharaj, but it's not so easy." I never say it's easy. But in the same way, you may live in a monastery and you have to do your homework to invoke something that is otherworldly. Because if not, you can be in a worldly situation in a monastery also. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur will say, "My house is not my house. It's an ashram. It's the mandir of Thakurji, the deity, and doesn't belong to me." It all starts by the transformation of one's ego, basically. How you are that. My wife is not my wife. All this idea of my house, my wife, my car, my children. You start to this aham mameti. In Sanskrit, aham mameti means I, me, mine. So my sense of I is derived from my sense of mine. According to what I think belongs to me, that's what I am. That's complicated. That's not a good equation. According to what I think belongs to me, that's who I am. So she is my wife, so I am a husband, because she is my wife. They are my children, so I am a father, and so on. This is my car, so I am a driver. But what happens when you understand that nothing belongs to you, technically speaking? What remains of you? If all your sense of I depends on what you think belongs to you, when you realize nothing belongs to me, what remains? You may be thrown into a neurosis, existential crisis. Who I am? And sometimes that happens to us. So I'm saying all this because you can have a house, a wife, children, job, and so on, but not necessarily you have to relate to all of that like my possessions or even my objects. Sometimes you objectify a person. You have your wife, but your wife ends up being a thing, an object for your enjoyment, or vice versa. It can happen. Of course, that's not the idea, to reduce reality, to reduce people to objects for my enjoyment. That's hell. So to live in an ashram means to remain with this consciousness as we spoke these days, this belongs to Krishna, sacred space. My wife is a companion that Krishna is sending me so I can properly serve her, and we will exchange and learn from each other and accompany in our journey. And my kids are a gift of God that for sure are teachers. I will have to teach them, but they will teach me a lot. and remain in that sense of identity, like witnessing all that is happening as a gift of the divine. And of course, again, that requires sadhana and introspection and constant remembrance of these facts, because if not, you easily get carried away by the world. Again, I understand that can happen, but that ideally shouldn't happen, or it should happen less and less. Again, if it's happening, you also do not torture yourself. Like, oh no, bring the whip. No. I'm in the world, I'm so falling, I'm in the dark well, and blah, blah, blah. Another whip, please, I need to now. That's another way of narcissism, because still you are in the center. I am this and I am that, and it's only about me. Yeah, I. Bring more whips for me. I. So there is a place. Bhaktivinoda Thakur will say that. No? My wife is not my wife. She's a great Vaishnavi. I'm serving her. My house is not my house. It's a temple of Bhagavan. My kids are not mine. They are under my care. So I develop responsibility, of course, commitment in service to all these personalities. Not so much they are there as objects in my service. So it's all about how you choose to educate your approach to these realities. And of course, this needs education, because generally we may be easily carried away. And of course, we need association with other people who will remind us of those things. Or when they see that we are getting sidetracked, they will say, I agree. Let's back on track, okay? We may get distracted sometimes, it happens. Again, even as a monastic, that can happen. It's not just only to those outside. So in that sense, I say the other day, as devotees, we don't need to make a difference between material life and spiritual life, because that's not necessary. If you choose to make that difference, okay, that's your choice, your problem. You choose to have material life. If you say, okay, I have my spiritual life here and my material life here, what does it mean I have material life here? What do you mean by that? Probably you mean I have this part of my life that I don't want to connect with Krishna yet. That's basically material life. So you take responsibility that you are not willing to connect that. But it doesn't mean that it cannot be connected with. Of course, if you tell me, Maharaj, I'm doing this extreme nonsense, and it's not possible to connect that with Krishna, actually I should stop that nonsense. Okay, that's another thing. But if you are willing to stop that nonsense, although you are still failing, I will say that's no longer part of your material life. Although you are still falling into that, but failing, but you are trying to somehow align more and more my life with Krishna. That's what Krishna is taking into consideration. Apichet suduracharo vajanti mamananyavak sadureva samantavya samyapya vyasitavisa. He's saying, even if you behave very bad, you are not an acharya, but you are a suduracharya, which means a person who behaves very badly, not who teaches by good example, but who teaches by bad example, what not to do. But he said, but still you are determined in surrendering to me. You have that determination, you have that desire. Sadhudeva samamtavya. Krishna says, for me, you are already a saint. Although externally you still fail quite a lot because of your past samskars and whatever. But you have that desire, I want to change this, I want to transform, I want to surrender, I want to give myself in a more comprehensive way. Krishna is saying, you're already a saint in my eyes. Wow, that's pretty generous. Of course, not to abuse that. I say, oh, okay, so then I can't keep failing and Krishna will consider me a saint. Now, if you calculate like that, you fall into another category, hypocrite. So So my point is that no, we should gradually try to live our life in such a way that whatever we are doing can be connected with Krishna. That we have been successful in that, that's another thing in every aspect. But at least whatever I'm doing from morning to night, somehow it can be connected to Krishna. That's called in Sanskrit Sangha Siddha Bhakti. Jiva Goswami says. You have Swarup Siddha Bhakti, which means these activities which are directly bhakti, like Kirtan, Sadhu Sangha, Shravan, and so on. And you have Sangha Siddha Bhakti, which means basically whatever thing you do can be made as a service of Krishna. You can have a shower, and that can be bhakti. Because if you have the proper understanding why I'm having a shower, not just to keep my body fancy for myself, but just understanding this body is an instrument for the service of Guru and Vaishnava, so I need to take care of the vehicle. And part of that is shower, resting, sleeping can be bhakti. Again, not to abuse that and stop chanting rounds because I'm only engaged in bhakti by sleeping now. Does not work like that. But it happens like that. Remember, you made a question some months ago in a similar topic. So we should live our lives in such a way that what we are doing can be connected with bhakti. Once my Guru Maharaj was giving a class and someone asked him or told him, I think that spiritual life should be something private. He was told by someone. I think that spiritual life is something that one has to practice in one's own closet, if you will. And my Guru Maharaj replied, say, no, spiritual life means that between your private life and your public life, there's no difference. Basically, in other words, spiritual life means you don't have anything to hide. Again, I'm not saying easy, but gradually we should practice our life in such a way that I don't need to hide anything. I mean, I'm not saying you have to publicly share your bank account and Gmail password. I'm just saying you behave in such a way that there's no need to act. There's no need to perform. There's no need to lie. There's no need to be hypocrite, dualistic, and that you are at peace with your own consciousness in a way that people can ask you whatever. You are an open, how do you say in English? You have that saying? Open book. Yeah. Again, not forcing that, but it can happen. I mean, it should happen. And we should understand big part of our anxieties in our lives are because we are still living certain aspects of our life in such a way that we are not able to make that public, if you will. We are still hiding some things. Hiding from some because Krishna is aware of everything. And that's the most funny thing, that we sometimes think, oh, I hope nobody noticed that. And Krishna is still saying like, well, what to do? And again, he's thinking like that, oh my God. He's not realizing that Antaryam is there, permanent witness. Not witness like, I'm taking note and you will suffer and I will chastise you, but just like a friendly witness that is there trying to tell you, hey, there is no need to hide anything. Like if you have a best friend in life, hopefully you don't have to hide anything from that person. And if that person is close to you, that person, if you are hiding something, that person will say, what's going on? No, nothing. It's okay. No, I know you. You're hiding something. Well, yeah. Okay. And we need to, at least as I like to say, to have that type of relief and connect at least with one person in your whole life that you know that person knows everything about me. I don't need to hide, to perform, to do any show in front. I can just be myself with all the embarrassing content that still may be there, but willing to acknowledge that and change that. So Guru is one of those personalities, or well, whoever in your life, friends, sadhu, person of your full confidence, that you can show that, and of course that will, how to say, when you show yourself in that vulnerable moment, they know how to empower you in your vulnerability. They won't abuse your nakedness. If you show yourself like that, the other person will nourish you, not exploit you. So we need those types of experiences. So spiritual life has a lot to do with that, a lot to do with having faith and trust and accepting unconditional love. I'm going always to this topic because that's so connected, and fear on the other side, because we still hide so many things because we are fearful that people may realize how much of a disaster we still are. And people will not love us because of a disaster we are, because we live in a world that love is not unconditional. But love is conditional, which means when you are perfect, call me and I love you. Or at least show yourself as perfect. Make the show so people buy the product. That's the world. No, that's publicity. Publicities are selling you something that is actually not true. No, I remember I had one friend of mine. I spoke. He works in a publicity company. He's the one who thinks about how to lie to people technically. And I remember I asked him like 15 years ago, like, is there one single publicity that you don't have to lie to people? And he told me no. If not, that wouldn't be publicity. I mean, you don't need publicity. You don't need to publicize something you need to publicize something that you actually don't need. So you think you need it. I don't need to promote you with fancy publicity, breathe air. No. You already know you have to do that. I don't need to sell the product to you. But other things that you don't need at all. I need to lie to you so you think, oh, I need to breathe that air. That's almost as breathing air. I need that now. So, and of course, lots of publicities again. Show perfection, and then you will be loved and accepted. So, but spiritual life is show your imperfection. And then you will really love and accept it. That's the real love. Again, if I only love you if you are perfect, that's not love, that's ego. Oh, you are imperfect. Sorry, I cannot love you yet. Call me when you are perfect, and then I will love you. Which love is that? We don't know. There's no hope in that. We will never be perfect as that person expects. We first need love to come, so then we can be perfect. We are imperfect. We need love to come so we can become perfect. We cannot become perfect and then call love to come. No chance. That doesn't work. But that love will be unconditional love. Unconditional love means, again, you are not perfect, but I love you. But as we said the other day, sometimes we are our own worst enemy. And someone tells you, I love you despite your imperfection, and say, no, that's not possible. I'm too imperfect. I do not deserve that. I just start like, bring the whip again. And you are really receiving unconditional love, but somehow you close yourself because you are too convinced about your own, to identify with your imperfection. That when real love is coming, knocking your door, you don't open the door. Or you open and say, wrong door, I don't deserve that. And love will say, yeah, you don't deserve that, but you need that. Here I am. And you have to digest all that. So that's important. That's how you can overcome the fear of this facade, you say, of showing something that is not. We are showing something that is not because we are totally terrified that people realize how disaster we are, and nobody loves us, and we remain alone. Nobody wants that. But the real relief, because that's a constant anxiety. May nobody notice how disaster I am, and everyone else is thinking the same. and the depths, everyone knows all of us is a disaster. But show must go on, basically. So the real relief to the whole show is to cancel the whole circus. Is to find people in our life that are loving us despite our imperfection, not because of our perfection, but despite the lack of perfection. So we have an experience of unconditional love. Wow, I can show myself as a disaster, and I'm not alone. I'm not left alone. But actually, on the contrary, I can get closer to people, at least to certain people, to those who are interested in being honest. And those may be a few. No problem. We are not after quantity. You may be ending counting them with the fingers of one hand. No problem. Even if it's only one finger of one hand, that's enough. So, yeah, I don't know how I ended up there, but it's connected to your question. So we have to know how to deal with all the things, guilt and shame and fear that many times paralyze us. And for that, we need to expose to real affection and unconditional trust. I know it's not easy, but there's no other way. If you don't work in that direction, we will remain superficial for the rest of our life. And that's so frustrating. The years pass, and if you keep on a superficial level, you don't have deep friendships, deep connection, deep dialogue. That's frustrating. Your own Atma is shouting in the depths, like, do something about that. Help. So it's important that we make the necessary steps to deal with that. And it may take lots of time and energy, but it's worthy of investing our life in that direction. So that's the idea. Okay, we have a few minutes yet. I don't know if there is any other question. If not, we can. Yeah.
Thank you for again for enlightening us in such a nice way. I was thinking something connected to how we understand Sastra, and like we hear in many stories things, like for example in Bhagavatam, many things that are pretty inconceivable. And shall we take everything like directly? For example, I'm giving
like literally.
Literally, yeah. I'm giving an example. Vritrasura. After Vritrasura, it's Chitraketu Lila, and Chitraketu.
10 million wives.
Yeah, exactly.
He tried to have a son, and he tried with each one of them.
Yeah, how
10 million times. How does you have time for that?
Everything which is in Shastra.
Yeah.
Because when you read this, your mind becomes quite confused.
Yeah. Actually, someone asked me basically that question the other day, via email, not in a class in this case, but basically the same thing, but in this case in another direction. Connected. How to understand and to deal with the description of the hellish planets. That's another discussion. But in connection to your question, there are different levels of understanding Shastra. We could speak generally in 3 levels: literal, interpretive, or interpretative. Okay, and esoteric. So according also to one's adhikar, one's level of vision and capacity, one will read something or find something in particular in Shastra, and another one will find something else in the same verse, and so on. And of course, in the beginning, one tends to take things literally. And in the West, I would say mostly, we have that problem. Generally, we are not so much accustomed to go to the interpretive meaning and esoteric. Many times, the Western DNA goes to the literal reading of everything. And that can be problematic with Shastra. Because there's relativity in Shastra as well. And with relativity, I'm not downplaying Shastra. I'm just saying some things are spoken in a cultural setting with certain language, giving some examples that are typical for that time and place. But if you take those examples and try to apply in 5,000 years after in Sofia, it may not work. Like, for example, I'm sure all of you heard this example, like being like a swan. What can the swan do?
Drink the milk out of the water.
Have you seen that anyway? Sometime? Is that scientifically proved? And even if the swan is drinking the milk out of the water, the milk is 70% water also. So what's the meaning of that? So again, this is not something to take literally. No? The idea is, you have to get the idea behind that. No? It's taking the essence. No? The idea is always given to the Saragrahi, that person who takes the essence from something and do not get like entangled in the details. In the words of Srila Siddhar Maharaj, you have principles and details. And in Shastra, there's a mixture of the two. And of course, Shastra is giving us absolute principles, but also they are couched in some relativity, language, times, culture. There is a substantial truth given, but it will be given in some packaging. So sometimes you need to read that beyond those details, because you may get, like the example you mentioned, Chitraketu Maharaj. I repeat it in case you didn't hear it. So it is described that Chitraketu, who was Vritrasura in his next life, not previous life, but next life, he wanted to have a child. He really wanted that badly. I want to have a child. He was king. He wanted to have a successor. Not happening. And Bhagavatam said he had 10 million wives. Try to imagine. Just try to count that. It's not happening. No? And he tried to have children with each one of them. Which again, if you start to count, no, how do you try? Count. How many days does it take? 10 million attempts. You're gonna try how many times per day? A few times per day. You have to make the division. It doesn't compute with the. So of course the conclusion is it's not that he literally had 10 million wives. The idea is that he wanted that a lot, and he tried a lot, and it didn't work. Maybe he had one wife. It doesn't matter. That's the point. It doesn't matter. It's not that, oh Maharaj, you are offending the Bhagavatam because it's so important that Chitraketu Maharaj had 10 million wives. What's the importance of that? If there were 10 million, 1 million, 101. The point that the Bhagavatam wants to convey is he wanted something. He was attached to something. He was willing to do anything to obtain that. And of course, that's a crucial part of the whole unfolding of the story, that eventually, as we know, Angira Muni comes and Chitraketu Maharaj is afflicted, and he asks the sage, please give me some blessings so I can have my child. There's a lot of symbolic meaning in this. The Bhagavatam also speaks with lots of symbology, because he was really attached. I want a child, I want a child, I want a child. But from a more, if you will, materialistic perspective, like attachment, I want a child. It's not so much concern about serving that person as sent by God, but I have this desire and I want the child to fulfill my desire. So Angira Muni says, but you are not destined, if you will, according to your chart, to have a child in this lifetime. But Chitraketu Maharaj says basically, I don't care, I want a child. So try to get the teachings of the story. Like sometimes you are destined to something, but you don't care for that. You are not accepting what you are destined to receive, and you insist, trying to go beyond what is established by law, by divine law. So Angira Muni said, he will think like, oh my gosh, this guy is so attached. So he said, okay, I'll bless you to have a child, but he will give you both grief and happiness. Like implying, actually, what will happen will be the same thing you are destined to experience, but in a different. You cannot escape destiny. Basically, he's making this point. And no matter, like Hiranyakashipu, No? I want to be immortal. Brahma, make me immortal, make me immortal. I want. And Brahma say, I cannot give that. That cannot be given like a candy. No? I'm not immortal myself. So Hiranyakashipu started, okay, so let's sign this contract. Let nobody kill me in the air, in the land, in the water, not by an animal, not by a human, not a day, all this. Like trying to, how to say it? Yeah, like my Guru Maharaj will say, trying to beat the system. No, but you cannot. No matter how smart you are and how much you try to make everything in such a way that now it seems it's working. It's the same thing. It will happen nonetheless, but you are destined to go through. So Chitraketu Maharaj was in the same mood. So the Bhagavatam has many of these stories making the same point. Like, have some integrity to accept what is coming to your life. Do not try to go against these higher forces. But he insisted, I want a child. Okay, you have a child. It will call Harsha Soka. Harsha Soka means affliction and joy. And he will say, he will give you both affliction and joy. And Chitraketu say, no problem. Affliction, yeah, as every baby may give some headache. I may not be able to sleep at night. No problem. But mostly I will be so happy. So he calculated everything from his attached perspective. And again, of course, the child was born from one of the 10 million queens. So you can imagine the other 9,099,999 queens. They kind of became jealous because the king was giving all his attention to the mother of the child. So they eventually poisoned the baby. So the baby died after a few days. So yeah, he had some joy for 1, 2, 3, 4 days. And then the distress was multiplied. He was suffering so much. So again, the Bhagatans want to make the point, no matter how much you try to beat the system, it's not happening. It's not happening. So I'm saying all this because, again, there are sections in Shastra which you can be like, or I don't know, fifth canto. Again, is the earth flat or not? And that's not the point of the Bhagavad. do not get like neurotic about astronomy or whatever. No, the Bhagavad wants to tell you, point to another direction. And sometimes you will find, yes, some statements of the Shastra are contradicted by scientific findings. So depending the case, in some cases, one should be open to acknowledge both and not just try whatever the Bhatana says is total revelation and whatever all these scientists are saying are just stupid nonsense people, so we have the truth. And sometimes in a fanatical way, you kind of, the rest of the world will see you like, okay. I mean, I'm not relativizing everything the Bhatana is saying, but also Sukadeva Goswami is speaking from a very ecstatic perspective. So if he's saying, you know, the sun is revolving around the earth, who knows what he's seeing in his ecstasy. The universe is upside down or something. You never know. It's his subjective experience. So yeah, there is place for. That's in Sanskrit. It's called Mukhya Vritti, Lakshana Vritti, Vyanjana Vritti. So Mukhya Vritti means the direct meaning of Shastra. For example, Krishna calls Arjuna, to go back for a minute, in the Bhagavad Gita, Purusha Vyagra. So Purusha Vyagra means tiger among men. So he calls, oh, you are a tiger among men. So Mukhya Vritti means, the direct meaning of that means that Arjuna is a tiger. Is Arjuna a tiger? He walks in 4 legs and is roaring. No. So you have to resort, you cannot take the literal meaning. So ideally in Shastra it is said literal meaning should be taken as long as it doesn't make sense. And you need to resort to a secondary meaning. Because whatever Shastra says makes sense in some way or another. You cannot just think, oh, this section is nonsense. But it not make sense in the literally primary meaning, so you have to go to a secondary meaning. So for example, okay, Arjuna is not a tiger, literally. So what does it mean, tiger among men? I imagine all of you naturally will feel, he's like a warrior in battle and ferocious, and he's like a tiger among men. So it's more like an interpretive reading of what it means. And then you harmonize. So there's place for that. Of course, one has to be properly, if you will, trained to do that, because if not, you can be taking secondary meaning in things that you should be taking directly, vice versa. And that's why Shastra also should be learned by guru and sadhu, no? Because maybe in the beginning you can just take the book and make it a disaster, basically, no? Like the other day, someone was asking me, like, which book should we recommend to a newcomer to the temple? And the reply that came was, of course, one can reply some book, but also the reply that came was, first try to know the person a little bit and see if that person is ready to read. There's people who is not accustomed to read a book, especially nowadays. People do not read sometimes. So it's not that you give the book and necessarily they're understanding it. So first, try to know the person and try to see, some people should read this book, some people should not read at all yet, and should hear the explanation, and you are sure that the person is understanding what is said, and you are asking, what do you understand by what I say? And maybe you realize you didn't understand at all what I said, what I intended. That can happen. So it's important, because if not, I was the other day seeing one recent small presentation of Richard Rohr, a Franciscan monk. He was speaking about this. He was basically emphasizing that for them as priests, before they were a Bible was put in their hands, first they had to go through so much philosophical training and so much training about how to read and how to understand a book. Because if not, you put a spiritual religious book in the hands of someone who doesn't know how to read, that person can make it a disaster, can kill half the world or something with the word of God in the hands. Because it's dangerous. You have these absolute conceptions that if you don't know how to process them, you can be a dangerous person. So he will emphasize, in the beginning we have to be trained about how to read, how to understand a book. And then in time we may be able to follow my point. No? So that means also in connection to this idea. So there are sections of the book that can be taken in that way, literally, or just they apply to certain people. Like Krishna in the Gita, he's saying to Arjuna, I don't know, follow your dharma. This second, third chapter. And the conclusion of the Gita, he's saying, Sarva dharma parityaja, abandon all dharma. So it's like, what's going on here? Should I pick the one I like the most? No, you have to understand the whole thing in context. And in between those two statements, there are like 500 verses that will help you to understand those two statements. So approaching Shastra or divine revelation is not just like opening any book. It's very special. So Chitraketu didn't have 2 million wives. Something else? I don't know. We have a few minutes before finishing. If not, we can do some kirtan before finishing. But okay, we will conclude here. Thank you so much for your time and presence, questions, invitation, and my pleasure again to have been yet another time in Bulgaria. Hopefully, not the last. See you very soon. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanand Hari Om. Vanchakalpataru Vishta Kripa Sindhubhye Vachavati Tanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Hari